It was the 12th of October of 1428 at the French city of Orléans. An English army, 5,500 men strong, had arrived to lay siege. The force was commanded by the experienced Thomas Montagu, Earl of Salisbury, who had taken part in the Battle of Agincourt and had led several campaigns against the French. With Paris and northern France occupied by the English, Orléans was the most fortified bastion still in hands of the French and the key to the south of the Loire Valley. Salisbury intended to take the city in order to establish a base of operations from which to launch the definitive invasion on the remnants of the Kingdom of France. His army integrated a formidable artillery train, as well as a 1,500-strong contingent of Burgundian troops. 3 days later, on the 15th of October, the English cannons sounded off. Bombardment had begun. As the Duke of Orléans remained a prisoner of the English after his capture at Agincourt, the defense of the city was assigned to his half-brother, Joan of Arc, nicknamed the Bastard of Orléans. The Bastard had prepared for the siege thoroughly, stocking supplies and raising the local levies. He correctly identified the gatehouse of the southern bank of the river, Les Tourelles, as the weak spot of the city, fortifying the place with earthworks and palisades. Indeed, Salisbury intended to take Les Tourelles by storm, which would allow him to cross the bridge and place his cannons closer to the town centre. During the bombardment, he gathered an assault force on the southern bank of the Loire. The morning of the 21st of October arrived calmly, and the English cannons remained silent for the first time in 6 days. The French defenders hurried to the battlements, for they knew what that meant. The English assault was coming. Like the tide, the English assault force rushed towards the damaged earthworks of Les Tourelles. Supported by their archers, the English infantry swarmed the French fortifications. The clash was fierce, and the defenders held the earthworks by any means necessary. The English longbowmen, at a safe distance, released volley after volley on the palisades. Despite the rain of arrows and the unending tide of English infantry, the French defenders relentlessly stalled the advance of the attackers. A few hours into the fighting, the struggle over Les Tourelles had become a tight stalemate, and victory seemed to slip out of the hands of the English. With the French defense proving harder to break than Salisbury had anticipated, the English commander ordered the assault to be aborted, and the troops pulled back. By the end of the day, Les Tourelles remained in French hands. However, this valiant stand would be futile, as the English resorted to mining tactics and reached the foundations of the gatehouse 2 days later. The French retreated across the bridge to avoid being buried under the debris towards Orléans. They burned down the wooden drawbridge before entering the city, thus preventing the English from crossing immediately into Orléans. Soon after, before the wooden drawbridge was repaired, a single cannon was fired from the walls of the city. The projectile landed close to Salisbury, sending debris flying that sliced the face of the commander. Salisbury was rushed to the care of the physicians, but died soon after. The death of the Earl of Salisbury was a considerable blow to the English leadership and morale, and the ensuing confusion granted the French the time to further demolish the bridge to Orléans. Eventually, William de la Pole, Earl of Sussex, was appointed the new commander of the siege, but when the English recovered, the French had already rendered the bridge to the city completely unusable. The cold temperatures of winter settled in, and it became evident that the Siege of Orléans was far from over. As the beginning of 1429 arrived, the French were finally able to muster a relief army, and 4,000 men set out from Chinon under the command of Charles de Bourbon, Count of Clermont. At the same time, an English convoy of 300 supply wagons departed from Paris under Sir John Fastolf. The baggage train was escorted by 1,600 men, mostly archers and cavalry. When Charles de Bourbon learnt of the supply convoy, he changed the route of his army, aiming to intercept Fastolf's force. On February 12, 1429, the English discovered French scouts in the vicinity of the supply force. Fastolf, aware of the weak position of the convoy and knowing an attack was coming, arranged his battle order. The carts of the baggage train were organized, forming a wagon fort, inside of which the English longbowmen sheltered. 2 wings of cavalry remained at the flanks of the fortification, and the front was covered with sharp wooden stakes. Overall, the English force amounted to 1,600 men, the majority of which were archers. On the opposite side, the French army finally came into view. De Bourbon arranged his battle order. He placed his infantry in the center and his cavalry in the flanks. The infantry in the first line was a Scottish contingent, led by Sir John Stewart of Darnley. In total, The Franco-Scottish force amounted to 4,000 men, as well as several bombards. Seeing the defensive position the enemy had taken up, de Bourbon ordered his cannons forward. The defensive positions of the English were devastated by the cannonballs. As the supply carts were impacted by the artillery fire, piles of herring and other fish were spilled on the ground, thus giving the battle its name. If the bombardment continued for long, the French would win the day. And that is what would have happened if the Scottish contingent hadn't disobeyed their orders. Sure of their victory and eager for English blood, the Scots situated at the center of the French army now charged towards the wagon fort. The longbowmen, comprising the majority of the English force, rained down arrows on the attacking Scots. The storm of projectiles that would have already been a nightmare for enemy knights cut down many of the lighter armored assailants. In order to avoid ravaging their allies, the French gunners halted the bombardment, allowing the English to prepare for the clash. At the other side of the field, de Bourbon was enraged by the disobedience of his Scottish allies, but launched his cavalry into the fray in an attempt to save the day. In a counter-maneuver, the English cavalry joined the fighting as well. The fighting was fierce, but despite their numerical superiority, it soon became evident that the English would be victorious. A general riot was triggered among the Scottish infantry. The English darted forward from behind their wagons of herring, and a massacre ensued. With the enemy in a defensive position and his infantry broken, Clermont was forced to retire his cavalry. The Battle of the Herrings had been won by the English. A few days later, John Fastolf's convoy triumphantly entered the English siege camp. The Battle of the Herrings not only had ensured that the besiegers were fed, but also had thwarted the French attempts to relieve the city. The English victory bolstered the resolve of the besiegers and was a significant blow to the morale of the defenders who watched from the city walls how their enemies strengthened their position. The Siege of Orléans was far from over. The Battle of the Herrings was the last significant military action during the siege before the intervention of the famed Joan of Arc. On the following video, next Sunday, we will cover the exploits of the Maiden of Orléans and how her appearance in the conflict decided the outcome of the siege. If you stayed until the end and enjoyed the video, please consider subscribing to my small channel for weekly Total War documentaries. I script, record and narrate everything by my own means, so if you could leave a like and comment as a form of support, I would be immensely grateful. Thank you for watching and have a good day.